All right, so we made it to Into Darkness, which is the film that you've been dying to talk about, Clay. I think it's the reason that we're doing the Kelvin films is because you want to talk about, it's Peter Weller, right? It's not Paul Weller. Paul Weller is like the bassist for the Jam or something like that. Is it Peter Weller?
Peter Weller.
Peter Weller.
I will be talking like this the entire time in order to make it seem like what I'm saying has more weight than it actually does.
You have to kind of talk like you've got peanut butter stuck to your teeth and you're trying to get it off with your tongue, and your lips start to spread apart in a really strange way.
Excuse me while my eyes well up about stuff you do not care about.
I was reading a review. Benedict Cumberbatch was described by someone as unhandsome, which is interesting to me. And
what?
I was
what
looking at him,
mean?
and he's a very strange guy. Like, he is handsome, but he definitely has features that you would not expect in a handsome person to have. Like, if you compare him to Chris Pine, just going off of each other, he does look a little bit off in terms of like what you'd expect. But it just caught me off guard. But I think it's an accurate description of him. I don't know if we want to start the conversation there, but I thought it was a funny description of an actor who I previously would have been described as handsome, but I guess I could see the reason why you wouldn't describe him that way.
I have always thought he looks like he is one Photoshop filter away from being a cross between a human and a gray alien.
Yeah.
So he's got a very unique look.
He does.
Let's put it that way.
He's distinct, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yes, there you go. Distinct.
Let's play some music, and then we'll come back and we're going to break down Into Darkness. All right, so this is Star Trek Into Darkness. It is the second Kelvin film out of 3. Came out on the 16th of May, 2013. It is the 12th of 13 Star Trek films. Written by Roberto Orci, Alex Kurtzman, and Damon Lindelof. Directed by J.J. Abrams, so pretty much the crew from the first movie. Produced by Abrams, Burke, Kurtzman, and Orci. In this movie, a series of terrorist attacks on Earth places Kirk on a mission to deal with the culprit. Nothing is as it seems as the Starship Enterprise is entangled in covert machinations to ignite war between the Federation and the Klingon Empire, with an ancient enemy in the mix. With alliances tested, relationships strained, and differing motives clashing, how costly will be the thirst for vengeance? Talking about Star Trek Into Darkness.
Roughly
the reviled
$26.
Movie. What?
Roughly
How many?
$26. $26 worth of vengeance is about what it is.
2 ticket prices.
The cost of
Or
vengeance,
maybe that's
yes.
1 ticket price, I guess, depending on where you live to go.
Now
see
it
the movie.
is. Yeah, Jesus Christ.
So I would describe this movie as
Bad.
a bigger version of the first movie. I'm probably I would agree with you that this movie is bad. I find it for some reason more watchable than the first movie.
Interesting.
Like,
yeah.
I know it's not good, and I'm watching it and I'm kind of like laughing under my breath during a lot of the stuff that's going on. But I just feel like if the Kelvin movies are going to kind of be this thing, I think the thing that held me back from really embracing the first one is that I go into these kind of just expecting them to be action movies, and this one feels like it is the aliens to the alien of movies. Like, it's just bigger in pretty much all regards. It's got more aliens in it. It's got more stuff. There's more emotion on the screen and stuff like that.
Sure is.
But I know it's not good.
All over the lens.
I know it's not good.
You know, I'm being a bit hyperbolic, obviously, but I think I'm curious if the reason for that, the way you think that, is because it has more Star Trek stuff in it. Is that
like
possible?
references? You mean?
Yeah, I don't mean like necessarily references, but like you get a little bit more. You get a look into Starfleet a little bit more. You get some Section 31 stuff. You get like the because I have that. I react that way to stuff too. I'm not saying this is why you're doing it, but
yeah.
Like this is the kind of movie that I could see myself. Maybe the first half of this movie is the movie I could see myself rewatching just because it's sort of more like living in the world they've created a little bit more than the last one was.
Yeah.
Because once they get onto the ship, it's basically they're on the ship. This one has a lot on Earth. There's probably more action on Earth in these across these two Star Trek movies than there is in any other Star Trek series.
It's always surprising to me that the ships crash on Earth at the end. I assume they were billions of light years away from Earth for whatever reason, but they're just knocking on the door of Earth. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that last final battle ship to ship takes place like in walking distance of the moon, I think.
Yeah.
It's a movie that watching it this time, because I had really sour memories of it from watching it the first time, and I haven't seen it since. But this time I actually was on board for about 45% of it.
Mm-hmm.
Up until they reveal who Khan is, I was on board. I was like, okay, yeah, bigger movie, fast paced. They're definitely taking they're definitely using the launching pad from the first one stylistically to keep doing more of that stuff. And then they reveal Khan, and it just nosedives for me.
Mm-hmm.
Because they reveal Khan, and they take like 15 minutes in the middle of the movie where everybody explains everybody else's position. Where Khan explains his entire backstory, and then they call up Marcus, and Marcus explains his entire plot and backstory. And then I'm speaking sort of, metaphorically, but then they literally call up Spock, and Spock literally explains to other Spock who Khan is, which I can't fucking stand.
Yep.
And then from that point, it just turns into this massive bloated action thing with all this manufactured drama. That's just a soft, or I should say a heartless retelling of Wrath of Khan with the characters flipped. That almost feels like in wrestling there's a phrase of getting your win back, where like if you like, for instance, in WrestleMania, you're gonna kill me, 6, I think, Ultimate Warrior and Hulk Hogan fought each other once. It's the only time they ever fought, and Ultimate Warrior won. And then when Ultimate Warrior joined WCW years later, everyone thought it was so Hogan could get his win back, Yep. So you beat me once, I beat you once, now we're even. This feels like Spock getting his win back from dying in Wrath of Khan, where it's like now Spock gets to do all that like dramatic shit.
Yep.
But this movie, it feels like it was written by Spock, the last half of this movie. I don't mean the actor. I mean the character of Spock, where he's like, I really didn't like the way they treated me the first time around. What if Spock just gets to be an action star and just kick everybody's ass? And this time, what if Spock gets to yell Khan? It feels really weird and ham-fisted. And then it turns into a really generic destroy the city thing, which was really hot at the time.
Yeah.
It's just a really weird mishmash of stuff in the second half of this movie.
A remnant of a time long past. Genetically engineered to be superior so as to lead others to peace in a world at war. But we were condemned as criminals, forced into exile. For centuries we slept, hoping when we awoke things would be different.
Yeah, it's funny because I don't see a big distinction between once Khan comes in and what happens. To me, it all feels of a piece where this movie is like, I'll just say it again, like the movie is just bigger in pretty much every way, and I don't know if that really works, because where the first one did have a kind of Star Trek-y feel to it, this one is just like, they might as well have just called this one like Star Trek Wet Eyes and Close-Ups, because 90% of the movie is just people in extreme close-up on the verge of tears about something. Like everyone is like that. And it feels to me like they had this idea of like, well, it has to be like Empire and you have to go a little bit dark, but they don't really do a good job of explaining why everyone is so emotional at this point in the story. Like I feel like how much time has passed between this and the first movie?
Unclear.
They don't mention it. So it seems relatively soon. Is that fair?
It's got to be relatively soon because I mean the Pike talks to Kirk or berates Kirk as though he hasn't been doing this very long.
Right. And they haven't started a 5-year mission or anything yet.
Right. Yeah, they haven't gotten a mission yet, yeah.
So the thing is that it doesn't, if time has passed and things have changed, it kind of has a motion picture thing where you don't really understand where the characters are at when they're coming into this. It feels like things have changed, but you're not privy to knowing what is actually changed with them. And it's just like, if anything, the thing that was carrying me through is just watching the actors. And I can't say that the actors are not trying in this movie, but it's...
Oh, they're trying real hard.
Everyone's trying real hard, but it's also every single scene is like that. So it's like they are nailing the aesthetic that they wanted to do. And what I think this movie is this movie is the genesis of the Discovery storytelling method.
I would agree with that 100%, yes.
It's very much everything that comes from this is what Discovery does, and which is to take incredible melodrama and pair it against a story that is very tough to parse out. I guess we had a conversation on the Discord and Twitter about this, and I guess you could say that the script makes sense, but it's not easy to understand while you're watching it what's going on with people.
Right.
Is that fair?
Yeah, it's one of those stories where, like, as you're watching it, if you're not super paying attention, I feel like the heavy lifting is done by the emotions that you're getting on screen at the time. So it's like, if you're not really paying attention to the plot, you're like, you get that, okay, Khan is the bad guy. Oh, then Marcus is the bad guy. Okay, but now Khan is the bad guy again. And that pretty more or less gets you through the movie. But then you kind of dig into it to really parse out what's going on. And it's like, this is really convoluted. Or at least the way they're presenting it is really convoluted. And then when you come out the other end, it's kind of just like, oh, okay, Khan was the bad guy. Marcus is now the bad guy. And now Khan is the bad guy. So it's a weird road you go on with the story.
Through the discussion on Discord, it makes it seem like the way that the story is presented makes it seem like there are a lot of layers to what's going on.
Right.
And there really aren't. It's really kind of
right.
simple. So to just quickly rehash it in case people are confused, because I was confused and I needed help figuring out what's going on. Marcus unfreezes Khan, and he wants him to use his intellect and his powers to sort of get the Klingons to go to war with him. So he has Khan design these weapons and the ship for him.
Which, if I could jump in for a second, is hilarious because the dude's 300 years old. How is he going to really...
He's going to catch up on Wikipedia. He's just going to
is he going to do like a data thing where he reads the entire manual in 30 seconds or something? Like, I just don't know. Even if you woke up the smartest person who was abnormally smart from 300 years ago and said, hey, can you help me build a better bomb? They'd be like, can you give me like a while?
Yeah, first they need to invent electricity or something.
Yeah, I guess technically they don't explain how long it's been, but still, it seems like a bit of a stretch to me.
So Khan is unfrozen. He does this for Marcus. Khan tries to escape, and the reason that Khan is doing this is because Marcus is holding the other superhumans hostage, basically saying,
Correct.
If you don't work for me, I'm going to kill them. Khan tries to escape by building these missiles that he's going to sort of get his people out of there. He's kind of, he's trying to like smuggle the people to get them into freedom. And he is found out and he escapes. Marcus finds the people in the torpedoes. And to start a war with the Klingons, as a Section 31 member is prone to do, he goes and has the Enterprise, under the guise of killing Khan, fire these missiles at Kronos. And that causes Khan to come back because he knows that the missiles have his people on them, so he has to stop. And Marcus's entire plan, it seems, is to attack the Klingons and get a reaction from them, and also simultaneously wipe out all of Khan and his followers in the attack.
Right. But in the middle of this, Khan attacks Starfleet.
Yes, which after he has broken up with Marcus, he does this. Yeah.
He breaks up with Marcus. He attacks Starfleet by trying to blow up Section 31, and then he shoots up the Admiral's dinner party or whatever. And that is then used as an excuse for Marcus to jumpstart the war with the Klingons and also hopefully kill
The idea is
Khan.
to kill Khan, but if he incidentally creates a war with the Klingons, that's Marcus's goal, basically.
Right.
So my problem with the script is that I approach this as someone who's familiar with Khan, thinking that Khan is pulling a lot of strings in what's going on here. And he's really not. He's a very passive villain in this movie who, frankly, makes a lot of mistakes that aren't really Khan-like. To me, like, if you're going to play this guy up as some kind of superhuman, super genius, I feel that he should be playing Marcus, and that everything that happens up to a certain point, up to him getting the ship, is what he planned for it to happen. And that's not actually the case in it, which is really strange, really disappointing, and it simplifies the movie a lot when you're not watching it through that lens.
Yeah, it's he's just trying to get his kids back, basically.
Yeah.
And the only reason he turns into like a terrorist is because he keeps getting fucked over by Starfleet.
Right. Yeah.
If Starfleet had just been on the level with him, everything would have been fine. And even so, after they bring him back on the Enterprise and he explains the whole thing, if Kirk was just like, yeah, sure, you help us out, we'll give you everything will be fine. You know, there's no reason to double cross Khan.
Right.
Because Khan is not doing, I mean, obviously he killed a bunch of people, but he's not doing anything shifty in this whole story.
Kirk is just angry because Pike died. Like the whole thing is just an emotional ploy. And you just end up like, I watch things like that, and like while I'm watching the movie, it seems fine. And I'm like, oh, Kirk is angry, so he's going to go after Khan and everything like that. But when you start to think about it, you wonder things like, well, was Khan attacking that group of Starfleet officers? Like, that seems like a mistake on Khan's part, right? Because he causes Kirk to go haywire after him. And all Khan is trying to do is get even with Starfleet. It just seems like the Khan of this movie, while he's portrayed as a genius, is like incredibly myopic and short-sighted about what the outcome of his acts are going to be. And I find that really disappointing. And it really, when you get to the end of the movie and you realize that he hasn't been this sort of like nefarious evil genius who's pulling the strings and now has this plot to both resurrect his people and take over Starfleet and everything, you're just like, well, that was kind of lame. Like, why was the script so convoluted if it's such a simple story?
Yeah, and like the part where they go on to the Dreadnought or whatever.
Yes,
I guess that's the
name of the make of the ship is the Dreadnought.
Yeah,
class.
it's the hip term for giant starships, I guess, because they use that in The Last Jedi as well. And Kirk tells Scotty, as soon as we get to the bridge, shoot Khan. It's like, up to that point, you have. I mean, I guess you don't trust him because he's a killer or whatever, but like if they didn't do that, there's no reason why Khan wouldn't have been like, thanks for helping me. You guys can go. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
It's Khan attacking Starfleet is the outlier here of him being a bad guy. And obviously the stuff he did is terrible, but it's not entirely unmotivated.
Right.
Like, I feel like you could, to an extent, explain it away. Like, if you sat down with him and Kirk would be like, all right, I see what you're saying. How about you just like come back with us? Everybody will be fine. We'll save your people. You know, it's like, I feel like I hate to do that thing where it's like, well, they should have X. And I don't really even think you can do that in this because there's so much shit going on. But
I think the bigger problem is that Khan is played as a evil genius. You know,
yes.
Like he's played in the way that you should feel that his actions are not deserving, that he is like the ultimate of cruelty and everything like that. But he's not really that character. So it's a strange.
The only reason that we know he's a bad guy and is like the most brutal person ever is because they call up old Spock and Spock says it.
Yeah. When he stomps on Marcus's daughter, that's pretty brutal.
That was true. That's, I mean, yeah, but you know, you got to do what you got to do. No, obviously that's bad. But like, it's a lot of like, why do they need to do that? Why do they need to? And what does Spock tell Spock that he died in the thing? Because they cut away when he's like, how did you beat Khan?
The ultimate, or what did it cost? The ultimate price or something like that.
Yeah, and like, does he tell? Because that usually when you do that in a story, the information that you're given the information that your character is given after you've cut away somehow plays into the resolution of the thing. Sure. You know?
Yep.
Where it's like when someone comes over and goes, I know what to do. Come with me. And then you cut away. When you cut back to that story, they do the plan that they told each other in between scenes.
Yes. Yep.
That's not the case here. I don't know what Spock told other Spock, but it doesn't help him win. Except maybe he goes down, when he goes down to see Kirk dying in the back of his head, he's like, oh, that's ironic.
Needs an Instagram filter where he can put himself superimposed on top of him.
My plot question, because we've parsed out like who's connected with who at what point and all this kind of stuff. At the very beginning, when Mickey from Doctor Who blows up Section 31, he downloads something and sends it to Marcus.
Yep.
What is he sending to Marcus, and why is he doing that? Is he trying to tip off Marcus that this happened, or I don't understand.
Khan is having him send a message saying that Khan is responsible for it.
That's what he sends. What he send him.
Yeah.
Do they say that on screen?
I think the message says something that like it mentions his name or something like that. It mentioned either Harrison or Khan, or it doesn't say Khan. It would have to say Harrison or something, I think.
Oh, okay. I thought the point was he goes down and he downloads some files or something from the Section 31 archives and then blows the place up. But it's just he just goes down there to blow it up, and before he blows it up, he sends Marcus an email.
Yeah, I think to let Marcus know that he's out there, I guess, and he's coming for him, something like that. I don't really know why he would do it or why it's necessary.
I find that to be unnecessarily confusing, because those scenes are usually, he's doing something secret for the bad guy, and then he blows everything up. But in this case, he's sending a message. Or I don't know. I just that doesn't track with me visually versus what they're doing versus what visually it looks like is happening.
Yeah, ironically, what I think actually really works is that I think it's pretty effective. The scene, the setup for why this guy is recruited by Khan really works for me in this this overly melodramatic, like everyone is weeping movie. The father being motivated to help his dying kid from Khan and killing himself in the process. I feel like that's the kind of thing that the movie was going for, but it only works in this, it's not a throwaway, but it works in this relatively minor scene, and it doesn't work throughout the rest of the movie, where I feel like everyone should be having the kind of sacrifices that father is making. But, we talked about it because this
big movie about killing yourself to save other people.
because this movie is kind of a new thing, but it's still at the same time based on TOS. It doesn't have the build-up time that the first movie allowed it to. You don't feel the same way for these characters that you did about the TOS crew in the TOS movies. It's like they're different. And so when you go from just the first movie into this melodramatic movie, it just, none of it feels earned, and you just feel like they're intentionally pushing buttons just to get those kind of reactions out of people, and it doesn't work.
Well, I think that they do, when I said I'm on board for about 45% of it, I think what they actually do really well is establish where Kirk and Spock are with each other at this point in the story, where after that first mission, Spock goes by the book and files a report, and then Kirk ends up getting chewed out and getting the Enterprise taken away from him. So you've got Kirk and Spock butting heads. It's kind of weird because it's like I feel like Spock got a little dumber in this movie.
Yeah,
or he got a little bit more Vulcan or something. Because
he's much more. Really he's totally. They can't play up the. For as much as the first movie played up the fact that he's half human, this seems to take it all away from him.
Yeah, and he's doing a lot more like, I don't quite compute what you're saying. It's like, come on, man, you understood that shit.
Yes, telling people brutal truth and not understanding why they're upset by it is a big trope of this movie. Like, and the other thing I noticed that they did that to Spock, and they also, I would say that they basically assassinated McCoy, who in this movie only spews lines that sound like they were like Mad Lib attempts at writing McCoy dialogue.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, back to Spock and Kirk battling with each other at the start, I think makes sense. I wonder, like, as much as I think it's effective, do you think that the arc that those two go through in their stories in this movie is cohesive about that? No. What's funny to me is that the lesson that they seem to both learn at the end is not what the setup is about at the start.
Yeah, and it's as much as I like where they start them, they very quickly kind of move away from that once all of the con shit starts happening. Like the last point where you really get any Kirk and Spock character stuff is in the shuttlecraft when they're going down to Kronos to kill Khan.
When they're in that, when they're the triangle seating arrangement with everyone's back is to each other, very oddly. Yeah,
that scene was pretty silly. Like I think
it's very melodramatic. It's so melodramatic is the problem.
I think they take Uhura for a bit of a ride in this movie too, because they kind of turn her into the angry girlfriend for the most of it, and kind of take away a lot of her agency.
I wouldn't say she was great shakes in the first movie, though. She's pretty backgrounded in both movies.
Yeah, I didn't feel like she was just there to be Spock's girlfriend, though, in the first one.
Yeah. Well, they had the interesting about they had to hide their relationship, which was a little bit more interesting than here openly weeping into each other's arms.
Yeah, and like I feel like, I don't know. I don't think the Uhura from the first movie is the kind of person who's going to get into a relationship argument on the way down to a mission, you know?
Yeah.
I did like the scene in the elevator though, when he's like, "Wait, are you guys fighting? What is that even like?" I thought that was pretty good.
I think I think the comedy works better in this movie than the first one, even if it doesn't work all the time.
Yeah, there's definitely less of it than there was in the first one.
Yeah, although I think the comedy works to a degree because I think when the jokes don't land, it sticks out as an incredible. Like I think the worst joke is when Khan and Kirk are waiting to be shot out of the ship to fly to the Enterprise or whatever. They're talking about something and it's played for laughs and it's really awkward at that point because Khan has just had his dramatic like speech where he's looking at the camera and then he's kind of he has to play the straight man to Kirk's ignoramus in that scene and it's like this is silly. I don't like this.
I do like in that scene at the tail end of it though where Khan crouches down in like ready position and then Kirk just kind of like does a double take at him. He's like, "Yeah, I'm also going to crouch down to ready position." I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah. Well, to get back to, because I do think it's important, Kirk's lesson, I suppose, in this movie is that he starts off with the hotshot who's willing to break risks, and I guess the ending lesson that he learns is that the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, right? Which is his sacrifice angle. I don't really understand how that tracks. I guess it's just to be that he learns that the risks that he's taking put other people in danger sometimes, so he makes the sacrifice himself, and that's the lesson that he's learned. Spock's arc makes a little bit less sense to me, I think, where he starts off as the rules are the rules guy, but I don't know what lesson he's learned by the end of it. Like, what is he supposed to be? He realizes that Kirk is killed by Khan and then chases him down and beats the shit out of him. And it's like,
right.
What's Spock's lesson here? Why is he so emotional and what's he learning?
If I had to take a swing at it, it's not that he's learning a lesson as much as at the beginning of the movie, all of the dialogue with other people and Spock is talking about how Spock manages to shut off his emotions. And he does that not because he doesn't care, but because he cares too much. And he's doing it like he's utilitizing everything, or I should say compartmentalizing everything in order to do his job. And at the end is what, after Kirk dies, is when he finally, because Spock's whole thing is people not understanding how he can't take other people's feelings into an account, sort of.
Yep.
And the end of the movie ends up being him essentially letting it all out. Like, this is when Spock's human side, all of his emotions, he decides not to compartmentalize it, and it all just comes flooding out and turns him into a silly action hero.
But I feel that you could accomplish what he accomplishes at the end of this movie with pure logic Spock. You know what I mean? Like,
sure, yeah.
The releasing of him feeling bad for Kirk is, if you think the development of him just letting that emotion out is enough, but to me, like, if Spock reacted like a pure Vulcan when he saw Kirk died and then chased down Khan and did the same to him, I would say that's exactly the same. Like, both of those make sense to me.
Yeah. If anything, you think the way that you might want to play it is have Spock shut down even further after the death of Kirk, where it's like he turns into RoboCop essentially.
Right.
And then systematically hunts down and beats the shit out of Khan. But it's only when Uhura appeals to his emotional nature that he decides that emotionally, it's not the right thing to do to kill this guy or something like that. You know what I mean? Where
yeah,
it's like
you could almost flip it where he logically determines that Khan has to die and Uhura talks him out of it, and by appealing to his emotion on some level, like Kirk wouldn't want you to do this or something.
Yeah.
That's kind of a weird flip, but they don't do that with him. They don't really do anything with him.
Also, my other huge nitpick with the plot of this movie, and I made sure to listen because I thought there was an out, but there's not, because they do mention that this is the case. The end of the movie is them going, Spock, you can't kill Khan. We need his superpowered blood.
They literally call it
Kirk back
super
to
blood.
life. Yeah. We need his super blood to bring Kirk back to life. And they're like, okay, that's what makes Khan's life important. It's too bad they didn't have 72 other superhumans on the ship at the moment that they could just take the blood from and just kill. So watching it this time, I was like, oh, maybe they don't know that everybody else is also a superhuman. Maybe he doesn't say it. Maybe he only says that he is. But I watched the scene again where he explains it, and he does say that they're all superhumans.
Yeah.
So
blood was frozen. Takes a long. It's like when you're hungry and you got to take the frozen chicken out of the fridge. And you got to sit there for an hour waiting for it to thaw. Does that take longer than hunting down Khan and beating him up and bringing him back to the ship? I don't think so. No, this is Discovery's storytelling. Right.
Yes, it's just 100%.
It's
100%.
fast. Keep your foot on the gas and don't worry about the bits of the car that are falling off as we're driving down the highway.
Even the opening scene where the argument between Spock and Kirk is that you can't let yourself be seen because you're violating the Prime Directive. The entire thing they're doing is violating the Prime Directive. I'm pretty sure Pike says that to them.
Yes.
And the chewing them out where he's like, guys, you being there at all is a violation of the Prime Directive.
Yes, because they're saving this species from death by interfering with the volcano. Yeah.
Yeah, so like it's even that opening thing and the genesis of this character drama is not entirely honest, because they're using Star Trek-y stuff inside this a blatant disregard for the thing they're actually talking about preserving. Although that is fairly how Star Trek generally goes with the Prime Directive.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough, because what we're thinking of is the Prime Directive in versions like in TNG episodes like Homefront and the Masterpiece Society, which I think are actually bad episodes because they have Picard and crew follow that idea where it's better to let people die than to let them know that you exist in the TNG universe, which I feel is like morally reprehensible on Starfleet's part, but it does fit in with if you want to have this as a rule and be the Prime Directive, there is a little bit of like narrative conflict within that idea about what some characters would think they would agree with that, some wouldn't. The opening scene is just strange because you fix that by Spock is not on the planet with them. And like Kirk chooses to do this and Spock is voicing his disapproval, but he's only second in command, so he can't just turn away from Kirk. Mm-hmm. And it's just this need to have them all involved in the action and throw Kirk or Spock down into the volcano and have him do his Star Wars planet thing situation there. It is sloppy and messy and everything like that. But to move it into something that I do like, or what I think is intentional, and even if I don't like it, it makes me wonder about like how much of a grasp the filmmakers had on the movie. I think the casting of Peter Weller is semi-genius and actually shows what they think they're doing with this movie, because he's over the top, and the kind of, not that his acting is over the top, but like casting him here in this role makes it just feel like the filmmakers recognize that this is kind of an over the top, not realistic Star Trek movie in some ways. Like it is the action movie of all of these, or it's the bombastic one. I just feel that if you wanted to play it as more of a serious role, I don't think Weller fits that characterization of the Admiral. I think you'd cast someone a little bit quieter than he is in this. Mm-hmm. And just I think that casting, the way that they play the close-ups, the way 85% of the shots in this movie are close-up and people crying, they're really just laying into this melodrama thing that Discovery also does. And it's just they don't recognize that this group of writers, particularly this career, I think some of them have moved. I don't think Lindelof is really like this anymore. I think he's grown as a writer over the past decade.
I think after he dipped his toe into Star Trek and Alien and was completely blasted away by a lot of the fans, I think he really rethought his approach to pre-existing material. If you listen to the podcast about Watchmen, like the first episode is him essentially talking about like, I don't think I should do this.
Right.
If I'm going to do it, it has to be worth doing, et cetera, et cetera. And even if I do it and I have to make sure that if it's bad for reasons that it's like he's considering stuff a lot more as far as licensed IP that people love,
Yeah, I think he's just developed as a writer based on the last couple projects he's done. Like he might have started off like Kurtzman and Orsi and everything like that, but it seems like he's moved in a different direction. But the people who have moved on to taking control of Star Trek television shows still seem to have this kind of mentality going for them.
Yeah. I was actually did Kurtzman and Orsi both wrote this movie as well?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was a little surprised actually, because I thought the first movie was a nice balance of that stuff for the most part.
Of what stuff?
Of the I guess now that we have seen Discovery, you could say the Kurtzman stuff and the non-Kurtzman stuff.
Yes, yeah. I thought the first movie, while I was watching it, I wasn't thinking, wow, this is a very Star Trek-y movie. But after watching this one, I was like, the first one's a pretty Star Trek-y movie, I guess,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was a little surprised that it wasn't a little bit more even-handed. Like for a second, I forgot to look and see who the credited writers were. I assumed it was Kurtzman and J.J. Abrams.
Yeah.
Because this feels like I don't love criticizing J.J. Abrams' visual proclivities, because he likes to do stuff sometimes. He'll use lens flares. I thought the lens flares were fine in this movie as well as the last one. They look cool.
Well, what I think is funny is I think his direction is pretty much the same as it was in the first movie, but his style fits this movie better than it fits the first movie.
Sure. But I will say that based on this movie, the first movie, and the most recent Star Wars movie, Guy really loves having a starship come up out of stuff, huh? Holy shit. The first one, they have it come up out of the clouds, which is arguably one of the better shots in that movie. Then in this one, it comes up out of the ocean. And then it also comes up out of the clouds again in this one. And in the most recent Star Wars movie, they have all those Star Destroyers come up out of the ice. I don't know what is it his inner submarine movie director just screaming to get out or something?
Yeah, he must have a favorite movie that does something like that. And he's just like, I want to put this into everything. Why, in this movie, why are they on the bottom of the ocean? Why can't they use the transporter?
I don't fucking know. They couldn't use the transporter.
Is the volcano interfering with them or something?
Yeah. I don't know why Kirk and McCoy are doing what they're doing. Is it just are they getting the people to chase them to get them away from the town?
I think they're trying to move them away from the volcano safely so that they don't see the ship going into the volcano.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is.
That's a little weak, I think.
I mean, because it's not enough to pull them away from the town, because they say that the volcano is going to threaten the entire planet if it blows up.
Sure.
So,
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what. Yeah, who knows?
I actually like JJ's direction in this one, just because the amount of close-ups is really comical to me, but just the kinetic energy he has to the camera in this suits the material a little bit better. And where the first one had kind of slower moments where characters were talking to each other semi-realistically about things, this one doesn't really have any of that. It's a lot of very dramatic interactions with people, a lot of running action. The thing that I noticed is there's a tremendous amount of using huge sets in this. There's the gag where Scotty's running from one side of the Vengeance to the other side to get to the other panel. When Kirk and Khan fall through it, they slide and roll on the ground for a long time. When they're running through the Enterprise as it's falling apart, they're doing the long sequences of running down hallways and things like that. it ties into the movie just feels bigger than the first one, but it's like even in the sets and the action pieces just feel like they're on bigger sets and bigger things are going on and lots more running and space to operate in.
Yeah, my favorite part is how they bring attention to how big the Vengeance is multiple times. And then when Khan and Kirk get onto the ship, Khan's like, we have to go on foot. We can't use the turbo lifts to get there, otherwise they'll know we're coming. And they're there in like 30 seconds.
Yep.
But yeah,
one last director piece. My favorite part of this movie might be when the Vengeance fires on the Enterprise while they're at warp. I love that sequence.
Yeah,
I think it looks really cool.
Yeah, that's something they've never done in Star Trek before. I thought that was cool. I love the Vengeance ship. It's a really cool looking ship.
Yep.
One of my favorite little details is in. I guess it doesn't really make sense, but you're not going to know this on the first watch. But in Marcus's office, he has progressive models of spaceships.
Oh, he does?
That go up through the first like Apollo rocket, up through the Kelvin and the Enterprise, and then the Vengeance. Which, I don't know why he would have a model of his secret Black Ops ship, but it looks cool.
Marcus, what's this one? He's just an old man's fantasy. Old man's fantasy.
Yeah, but I think the direction is good. I mean, everybody in it is good. I think.
Do you like the acting? Like, I think the acting is good. I think the actors are doing what they're told, and they're all consistently doing what they're told. So I can't hold it against any of them.
The scene that doesn't work for me the most, and I think it's the scene that really had to work, is when Khan explains what's going on. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like
in the brig scene,
he's in the Silence of the Lambs sequence.
Yeah.
I feel like Benedict Cumberbatch is really trying to make this material work. And I think he's going over the top with it, and it's not really working for me. Like I
feel he's matching everyone else's over the top energy, I guess.
Maybe that's fair, but I just don't think it works.
Okay, you're talking about the scene that I think of that, or the shot I think about, is when Cumberbatch is in the forefront of the scene and Kirk and Spock are behind him, and Cumberbatch is basically looking at the camera. That's as watching that. And the type of energy that Cumberbatch is giving in the performance, I think not cutting during that damages the performance, actually, because it comes across as really silly when you're staring at him like that for too long.
Right.
And I think if you cut and you put different angles, or you just showed the back of his head from like the other point of view, I think that doesn't make his incredible lip action really stick out as the only thing that you're paying attention to. And I understand that maybe they thought this is the kind of performance that we want from this guy, but I think you need to cut during that scene to make it seem less ridiculous.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you're shooting it and you're watching it, you're like, well, we've got Benedict Cumberbatch doing this amazing emotional acting.
Doesn't have much outside of this scene either. This is like pretty much 90% of his dialogue is in this.
Yeah, and I could see why you'd want to just let him do his thing, but yeah, it feels kind of silly in the moment, and it feels like it feels a bit too much, or like it's not conveyed visually or something in the correct way.
And just what's he looking at? Like, why is he looking at the wall as he's explaining this to them? It's an idea that seems like it's like thought out, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense for why they're doing it. It's a very stagey thing. Yes, very stagey.
Like, it's like, you're on stage, because I mean the whole concept of talking to someone with your back to them through a window is one thing where it's like, well, they're okay, it's a movie, but they're not going to be able to hear you in real life.
Yeah.
Like that scene in Bohemian Rhapsody where they're talking very quietly to each other 50 yards away in a rainstorm.
In the rain, yeah.
But yeah, it feels like a very theatrical blocking where it's like two characters in the background and then the other one steps towards the audience in order to deliver his emotional scene,
So, to stay on Khan,
mm-hmm.
Was it a mistake to... The thing that's interesting to me, and I guess that we learned this today in the Discord, is that the comics retconned this so that Khan has undergone physical surgery to not look like Ricardo Montalban.
Oh boy. Sure.
And we're going to ignore that because the movies are the only thing that are canon, in our opinion.
Right.
But
Yeah.
it speaks to where I...
And also why? He's 300 years old.
Right, they shouldn't. No, and no one has ever... They didn't know him in TOS when he wakes up. So recognizing him is not something that means anything at this point. I had problems with the timeline in the first movie that I think were actually mistakes. I wasn't really understanding what I was talking about. So I think that the first one works well. This is where you start to get into problems with the timeline a little bit, about whether or not the timeline changed when Nero came back. And I think that this movie is kind of saying that the timeline did change. At least I'm just going on the movies. I know the comics have said something else. But
no, I think it's still intact.
But you have to ignore the fact that he is not Montalban. Like, I understand this is purely a motion picture thing of like the Klingons look different. Why do they look different? But at this point, they're starting to ignore what I think is the fundamental setup of the Kelvin universe. Does that make sense? No, because I sorry, could you explain again? I think that the Khan in this movie, because he is pre-timeline split, should be virtually identical to the other Khan.
Yes. Are you talking about like in terms of character?
Character, yeah. I mean, I can ignore the fact that it's a different actor, but in terms of character, he should be exactly the same. Yes. Yeah. And maybe that's unfair because you're saying these are different movies, but I just think it's the timeline split is so important to this series that if you bring a character who has been literally frozen in time past the point where the timeline splits, doing that means that character should kind of wake up and almost be an audience avatar into like, what a different world I've woken up in here. You know what I mean? Like, Khan should be, as surprised as Khan was to wake up in the original series, this feels like it's almost a different twist on the universe that he would wake up in and be like that. And using Khan, final point, and I'll throw it to you. Yeah. Khan doesn't really work in this movie because if you're unfamiliar with Khan, his dramatic introduction is bizarre that he introduces himself 100%. Like that. It 100%. Just makes no sense.
Yeah. On the first point, I agree with you. But I think you could hand wave that by saying we don't know how long he's been awake for. So there's a level of
we don't know what Marcus put him through to get him to this point. Yeah, there's a level of acclimation already implied there because he's moving around on Earth pretty easily. So I could see, Khan just doesn't work in this story. Like, and it goes into the second point, which I 100% agree with, which is that if you watch that scene, even in the movie, if you watch the scene where he reveals who he is, he goes, "My name is Khan." It's real big heavy. Yeah. And then they cut back to Kirk, and he's like, "Yeah, so anyway." Yeah, I'll update the page. They react when I was in high school and had to tell teachers that I went by my middle name. They go, "Uh-huh." If I was just in there, it's like, my name is not John. My name is Wes. They go, "Okay, all right." We'll just write that down.
I'm still going to call you John. So it says John on the sheet. That's what I'm going to say. But yeah, like Kirk doesn't give a shit. There's no reason that Khan even needs to tell him what his name is other than for audience benefit.
Yeah.
There was
not even a full name. If he said his full name and Kirk was like, "What the fuck does that mean?" And he looked him up or something. He doesn't even give him that. Yeah.
Well, he probably doesn't say his whole name because then the audience would be like, that's a really not white name. And this guy is extremely white. But like, it's like in Spectre, the James Bond movie. Did you see that one?
I don't think so. I think I saw Skyfall.
They do a similar thing where they play for about half the movie that Christoph Waltz is this other character, and then eventually he reveals himself to be Blofeld.
Yep.
And they have a similar scene where he kind of gets into he's right there with Bond, and he's like, "No, my name is Hans whatever Blofeld." But the way he delivers it is completely drama-free. So it's not like he's turning to the camera and going like, "My name is Blofeld, the one villain that people know from this franchise." Yeah. He just says it in
just introducing himself as his real name. Yeah.
Which I thought worked 100 times better because, Bond doesn't know what the fuck that means. And he's not saying it as though the audience needs to know what that means. Like, if you know what it means, cool. If you don't, whatever. But this one, This one, it's like, this is the big moment that just doesn't work because of all of the things that that you just said about why it's not the same character. It's completely predicated on knowing who this character Khan is.
Yeah.
And going into the climax of the movie, understanding who Khan is from the other stuff, which is literally what they do when they call up Spock.
Yeah.
And even then, they don't really give you the full nuts and bolts of everything. It's just sort of like, yeah, he's really bad.
Yeah. You know,
and
what? Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
It reminds me of another movie that came out a couple years ago called The Black Coat's Daughter, which is this horror movie that I was really interested in seeing. And I was really into up to a point when they pull a really ridiculous twist. And I'm going to ruin this movie for everybody. So there's two storylines going simultaneously, right? And one of them is this younger girl who's probably like 15, played by, I think it's Kiernan Shipka, the girl from Sabrina.
Mad Men.
And Mad Men.
Yeah.
And the other girl is played by Emma Roberts, who is like 25, right?
Yep.
So they're doing these two parallel these stories about this, these killings and stuff that are happening, and this girl is like communing with the devil and killing people and whatnot. And then you find out at the end that Emma Roberts is an older version of this girl. And they're two different actresses that don't look anything like each other. And the year difference is like maybe 10 years, like
right.
way too little for it to be a believable
change.
Actress change.
Yeah.
And it totally took me out of the movie because I thought it was playing, dirty pool with the twist. Like there's having two completely different actors play the and I don't think it's fair. It's not fair storytelling to have your twist predicated on the fact that you had two different actors
right.
play the same character who at different ages within like a time gap where they wouldn't realistically have changed that much.
Right. It's like having a future self come back from a week in the future, but it's a different actor. And you're like, well,
exactly.
Why not just play the same person? Yeah.
Right. And that's the big problem I have with this movie as far as the use of Khan, where they're trying to hide his identity based on using this other actor who looks nothing like the character as the way to hide the twist.
Yep.
And
he has a fake name. He has a fake name for no reason.
Yeah, he uses a fake name, yeah. And it didn't work. I mean, like, everybody under the fucking sun knew this was going to be Khan. Like, as soon as the first trailer came out, they're like, oh, that's clearly Khan. And when they were like, oh, no, he's playing John Harrison, everyone was like, bullshit.
Well, that's my question for you.
The villain of this movie is not a guy named John Harrison.
That's my question, I suppose, right? Say you're the producers of this, and you're like, we're going to play this game where we're going to hide the fact that this is Khan. What is lost from this movie where if you were to play this where Khan never says his name, but all the hints are there that that's who this is? You know what I mean? Like, if he never says his true name, he admits that John Harrison is an alias. He's with this group of super people. He was frozen. He was thawed out from the Botany Bay. And you walked out, and fans of the series would go, that's probably Khan, right? And then the producers aren't lying when they say no. You're like, who knows if it's Khan? Who knows? Like, who could tell? And that's just the better way to approach it.
That's probably better.
Yeah.
I think it's more interesting. I mean, it's either, I guess it depends on how you look at it, because it's either more interesting in that it creates a level of, you have questions after the movie that make you think about it more, or you come out going, what the fuck? That was just Khan's story. Why didn't they just use Khan?
Yeah, but I guess you could even throw in a little bit of like, they're all supermen. That maybe this isn't Khan. It's just another one of the Supermen who have been unfrozen, Yeah,
if they had kept his name John Harrison, or used someone online said there was a character named Joaquin that looked fairly similar to Benedict Cumberbatch, and maybe it was that guy. Like, if they would you have been satisfied if they had just done the same story with this Joaquin character? It was not Khan, or let's just say he's John Harrison. He's part of this group. He's part of this group of superhumans. And then at the end, when they're going through and showing the 72 frozen people, one of the places that they stop is on Ricardo Montalban's face.
Yes, I wouldn't have minded that, actually. I thought that, I think that's fine, and I think that's a good use of using established canon, which is the frozen people on the Botany Bay, and they're all superhuman, so if you thaw out any of them, you're going to come up with someone who's maybe not as incredible as Khan was, but is effectively a super person who could do these things.
Yeah. I think that would be kind of cool. I mean, that's also very fan servicey. Like that's something that is only going to work if you know who that character is.
Yeah. What if you don't see his face and you just see a name on the canister or something?
Yeah, that could work too, I guess. But still, it's the same effect. Like if you don't know who Khan is,
right,
it doesn't
mean anything. But I think that doing that strengthens the narrative because you're not just relying on that twist. If you have to hide who it is, even if you know that this is Khan and you're writing it that way, you have to still work at making that character work and not rely 100% on people who are going to really love this when this guy says, I am Khan. People are going to fucking stand up and cheer when this shit happens. And they didn't really do that.
Because kind of going back to what you were saying earlier, they're changing the character more or less in service of this twist.
Yes.
So, you could say, oh, he's been around for a while. What his new experiences have changed him, so he's not like Ricardo Montalban or whatever. Sure, you could hand wave that away, but essentially what they're doing is they're changing Khan's character in service of keeping it a secret who this guy actually is. And I think that is not, I don't think that's fair either.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the other way you could go with it, I think you could go just have it be another one of the guys. Or you could imply that it's Khan, but never actually say that it is. What if you just come out at the beginning and say that it's Khan, and then save another twist for later in the story? So put some sort of spin on that instead of it being, oh, it's Khan. You're kind of in the situation, the season 1 of Discovery situation, where everybody figures out what the twist is, and so you're just waiting for it to come. And then it comes and you're kind of underwhelmed by it, and then that's just it.
Yeah, I guess they kind of flipped it, because if you have Khan revealed from the beginning, I guess the twist is that Section 31 exists in this movie, right?
Sure, yeah.
You could play Khan.
I mean, honestly, at the time when this movie came out, I think that would have been I think Section 31 in Starfleet could have been a much more interesting thing to dig into. Through the lens of Khan, than just being like, oh, Section 31's also here, but the real bad guy is Khan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like you've got the military-industrial complex stuff. I thought one of the better scenes in the movie is when they're loading up the ship with the new torpedoes, and Scotty is being like, no, we can't, I'm not going to do this. The Starfleet is not, we're not a war machine. We're explorers. And Kirk has been fairly militarized by the death of Pike and, the push of Marcus.
Yeah.
And I like that scene a lot. And I wish there was more of that in the movie than, once Khan reveals himself, it's just, a bang, bang, shoot him up.
Yeah. No, 100%. I think a good way to go with that is I was trying to think of why these...
Sorry, just one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
You could even use Khan in that case as, like, they never take stock of what Khan is in this movie.
No, they don't explain him, really. No.
Yeah, they just say, super soldier 300 years ago, blah, 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 blah. But you've got this guy who's a living weapon genetically created by, in the original show, I guess it was India, but I don't know who created him in this one. But, he's this genetically engineered super soldier who is now thrown 300 years in the future and has seen that nothing has changed.
Right.
Yeah. In his eyes, anyway, nothing has changed, which is why Starfleet needs to be destroyed or blah, blah, I don't know, some shit like that.
Yeah.
But you get a little bit more interesting viewpoint on what the existence of Section 31 means and the way that Starfleet is going because of it through him.
Yeah. I mean, to tie this into the TOS character, he has not yet been, in this timeline, he has not yet been woken up by Kirk in the original timeline, if that makes sense. So his first experience with being unthawed is Marcus. And
right.
The thing in Space Seed was that he was, they have a superiority complex. It's like, we're better than all of you, so we should be in charge, is the argument that the Khan and his followers make in the episodes in Star Trek. Mm-hmm. And in the movies, they changed that to make it more of a personal thing. But if you haven't had Space Seed in this universe, that should still probably be his prime motivation at that point. I don't think you can change that, really.
Yeah.
It's too central to his character. And
well, you could have him operating from the viewpoint of this needs to Starfleet needs to be taken down. Make him a little bit more of like a anti-hero who is not necessary, or like who has a point of view that is not necessarily wrong.
It's just different from the other bad guys, basically.
Yeah, which is but his methods and stuff are just that much more extreme, where he's like, look around you, Kirk. Look at what Starfleet is. You're telling me that this is how it should be. That's why I need to. Nothing's changed in 300 years. He's still believing that he is superior to everybody else, but he's like, that's why I have to I have to take this all down.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I was thinking about why I don't really love these kind of movies, and I think that action movies fall for me in a funny place where I think the worst thing that an action movie can be is neither very strongly made, and when I think of strongly made, I'm thinking of things like the 80s action movies would be like Die Hard and Predator and stuff like that. Like they're pretty bulletproof, those movies. Like they're very clean, very easy. The scripts are usually great. The other action movies that I kind of like are, I can ignore the plot because the spectacle is the entire thing. Like the Riot movies, or a lot of sort of Asian kung fu movies or fighting movies, martial art movies, things like that. Fast and the Furious would be that way too.
Do you mean The Raid?
The Raid. Sorry, what did I say? Riot?
Yeah.
Yeah, The Raid. And I can appreciate those because those, I understand what the point of those movies is, and it's not necessarily plot. These kind of action movies from this era, and this movie falls into it, are somewhere in the middle, and it's not very satisfying to sit in the middle for those aspects.
I was listening to the Rewatchables. I don't know if you've ever listened to that show.
Yep, the Ringer sports Bill Simmons podcast. Yep.
And they were talking about Dunkirk, and they were they have a section towards the end where it's called Apex Mountain, which is this possibly the best thing people involved have ever
done? The peak
done?
Of a career, yeah. Is this the peak of their career?
And they were talking about Chris Nolan, and they were talking about The Dark Knight, and somebody said, well, The Dark Knight is probably the most influential film of the 21st century. And I had never thought about that really like that, but I don't think he's wrong. And I think this movie is a good example of how that is true, because this and Skyfall both came out around the same time, within like a year or two of each other, I think. And they both feature a post-Dark Knight villain who has like this really complicated plot where part of it involves him getting captured. And that's not exactly what happens here, but this movie has a very post-Dark Knight, the Joker kind of villain in Khan.
Except Khan is not intentionally getting captured.
Right,
this.
yes.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Yeah, but it has the same kind of feel. You get the same kind of...
Maybe that's why I think that he is trying to be captured in this, because I'm like, well, the Joker did this, so therefore he must have... And Khan is smarter than the Joker, so he must have some kind of plot going on here.
Yeah, but it feels like it's of a piece of that era.
Yeah.
Where it's a combination of post Dark Knight and post Transformers.
Well, it's villains taking advantage of a hero's weakness, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And Transformers being a big one, because Transformers was when they realized that apparently the software needed to completely destroy a city wasn't that expensive. And so every single big action movie featured like this massive destruction of a city. And you put those two things together and you get Star Trek Into Darkness. Like the fact that Khan crashes the ship into San Francisco, he probably kills like 1 million people.
Yeah.
It's absolutely I don't know. That whole end sequence is just absurd.
It is. The fisticuffs between Spock and I like that he doesn't go down with the Vulcan nerve pinch. He just goes
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I like Khan being less vulnerable to traditional Star Trek.
Yes, phasers and stuff, and the neck pinch and things don't work on him.
Whoa! He just jumped 30 meters.
Can we beam him up?
There's too much damage. I have no incoming signal.
But it may be possible to beam you down, sir.
Go get him.
Do you want to sum up? Do you have any like final thoughts about this, or do you have anything else to say? I just don't. I find this movie bad but watchable, I guess. And if someone were to say, "Do we want to sit down and watch Into Darkness or 2009?" I'd probably say Into Darkness, just because I think it's like. I maybe this is just more of I'm not enamored with 2009, I guess. And to go back to my my pilot analogy, where that one felt like a pilot movie to kickstart a universe. You know how sometimes you watch a show and the pilot is one thing and the second episode is something totally different, and you're like, oh, this is what they actually want to do. That's what this feels like to me. They made the pilot and then they're like, actually, we're going to up the bombast a little bit. And we got to the second episode and I'm like, oh, I'm not sure this is the show that I was expecting, really.
That's funny, because if someone asked me if I wanted to watch 2009 or Into Darkness, I would say Star Trek Beyond. Because I think Star Trek Beyond does what you're talking about, but I think it does it better. Yep. Where it feels more like things are kind of up and running, feels more Star Trek-y. There's more stuff in that I like enjoy watching, I think.
Yeah. I have not seen Beyond yet, so this will be my first
at all?
watch.
Okay, that'll be interesting. Yeah. I did want to. How do you feel about the use of Section 31 in this? We didn't really talk about it at all.
And it's funny because I think when Darren was on the podcast, we talked about it, and you were surprised. You're like, Section 31 is an Into Darkness? And we're like, yeah, they are, but it's kind of just like a throwaway name mention.
Would never have caught it before I watched Deep Space Nine. That's
pretty much what it is, because otherwise they're just generic bad admiral. There's nothing. I mean, he does have a somewhat Section 31-y point of view, right? Which is that to protect the Federation, I have to do this at this point.
Right.
It's not really nefarious enough, or, it's a reference that I could do without, but it doesn't harm me that he is a member of Section 31 and all that kind of stuff.
I think that the fact that the head of Starfleet, we're not talking about just an admiral. Marcus is the head of Starfleet, right?
I don't know. You'd have to tell me.
I believe that he is referred to as the head of Starfleet. Okay. Someone will have to check me on that.
I can look this up as you're talking, but go ahead.
See, I'll make my point and then you can make my point invalid. If Marcus is in fact the head of Starfleet, the idea that
he is the head of Star. You are right. He is the head of Starfleet. Yep.
Good. I've bought enough time where this is actually going to make sense. The idea that the head of Starfleet was also the head of a Black Ops organization that was secretly building a warship in order to jumpstart a multi-planet war with the Klingons, also unleashes this super soldier who ends up killing half of San Francisco. Starfleet would fall apart. That would be a scandal unlike anything the universe had ever seen.
Yeah. No.
Like in the show,
Section 31 is not Starfleet in the show.
Right, it's a separate wing.
Yeah.
But like admirals, they all, except for Admiral Ross, but even there you can kind of like go, well, he kind of looks the other way with Section 31. But admirals generally don't turn out to be great people in Star Trek. They always have like one thing that they do where they end up being the villain of the episode. But nobody does anything at a level to this. And this would cause the destruction of Starfleet.
Yeah.
Like if I was the Klingons and I saw that this happened, I would be like, I think this is the time we attack Earth because they are in disarray, my friends.
No, it is disrespectful might be the wrong word, but it is not appreciative of what made Section 31 in the show, which was that it was important that there was a difference between the two things. And Starfleet itself recognized that and made them distinct from Starfleet. It wasn't just a what's that secret club? It wasn't just a Masons guild.
Oh, the Freemasons?
Yeah, it wasn't just a Freemasons guild that he happened to belong to. It was like a separate little organization that had a goal, and their goal was not really nefarious in that. Like there was a rationale to why they exist. Here, it's just he has to be the villain. The head of Starfleet is corrupt. He's doing bad things. He's RoboCop. Yeah, he doesn't care. He's going to do all this stuff to you.
The scale throws me off too. Like, because in Deep Space Nine, Section 31's missions are fairly close combat missions. It's like one guy sneaking into a place.
They don't have a building. They don't have a building dedicated to their stuff. They are decentralized, would be my argument. Yeah.
Yeah, they got one guy who's doing some spy shit, sneaking in and trying to either get some files or to stab somebody or poison or whatever. This movie kind of has Star Wars Empire problems, where it's like the number of people that you would need involved in order to do this is impressive. Every single person in Starfleet would have to be in on it.
Yeah.
Just to build that ship.
Yes. No. That's a good point. It does throw everything out of whack when you think about it. The scale.
The other thing I want to say is there's so much misdirection, unnecessary misdirection in this movie. Whether it's the con thing, or the Section 31 thing, or the torpedo thing, or the Carol Marcus thing, which feels needlessly obscured at first. It's just a lot of misdirection on top.
The only thing on her that is obscured, Clay. Hey yo,
yeah, man. I didn't really consider it at the time, but fuck, that shot is absolutely gratuitous. Like this,
she looks good.
She looks great, but there's no reason that shot should be in the movie.
No, it's very, very strange. Very strange.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just it feels like that thing that Lindelof and J.J. Abrams get accused of a lot, which is like mystery box for the sake of mystery box and not in the service of story at all.
Yeah, the fun is wondering.
Right, and it's once you find out the truth, it's like, yeah, okay, keep going, I guess. So yeah, that's what makes it feels really weird to me. I think that's about it. Yeah. Kyle will be mad if we don't mention the music. The music is fantastic. I didn't mention it that much in the last one, but I love the soundtrack. I think Michael Giacchino's score for these movies is amazing.
Yeah. I think it's good. It doesn't knock me out of watching, like it doesn't do the positive thing of like I don't really notice it as it's going, which is maybe a compliment, but it's not like a John Williams score, and I know that I'm comparing someone to John Williams, but I'm just saying that I like the music, but there's not a scene where I'm like, oh, I'm just going to focus on the music for a little bit now, and that never happens in these.
Yeah, I think it's fairly
it's very thematic. It fits the material.
Yeah. It's mixed in really well, but I think that he wrote a really great hero theme for the movies. Mm-hmm. So every time they have a dramatic hero moment, they play that blah 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 blah, which is really effective. I think that's really great. And the way that they over the closing credits, the way that they mix in the original theme with that and stuff is just really, really well done.
No,
that's why I was when I saw Rogue One, I was so excited for the music in Rogue One because I saw he was doing it. And I thought the Rogue One music was garbage.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
but I know he only had like a week to do it or something. But.
The hero theme in this is good because it feels very of the franchise, which is really all that you're expected to do at that point.
And it's the kind of theme you don't really get anymore.
Yeah.
One of the big critiques of the Marvel movies is how the music is fairly innocuous and all kind of similar. And I don't think generally, yes, but I do think that they have written themes for the characters. They're just not they don't stand out as much as, say, Danny Elfman's Batman or John Williams' Superman, that kind of thing.
Right.
But I think this is one of those classic scores where it's like, this is the theme, the Star Trek theme.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up there, I guess. If you guys enjoyed the content, thank you very much for listening. Best way to support the show is patreon.com/LepenskyFile. Couple dollars a month gets you extra podcasts and the ability to vote to control what we talk about. And as always,
that's what you have to do to vote in this country. Is you have to listen to our.
It is, yeah. I'm going to start pushing out IDs actually that you need to vote, but we'll get there when we get there. Once we get to a certain Patreon level, I guess. Special thanks go to our Captain tier supporters: Andrew Cherlog, Ben Douglas, Captain Cork, Cardinal Doomsday, Christian Michaels, Christian Pouch, Darth Moss, David Beermore, David Cage, Wayne Hackett, Eric Johnson, HH28, Yarpy, Jeffrey Koch, Joint Mango, Jordan Cooper, Kevin Reyes, Cal Barrett, Mad Courier 6, Matt Cutler, Matt Ross, Mike Burnett, Nathan Elliott, Neil Brennan, Nick Sergi, Robert Cummins, Russell Elledge, Samuel Custer, Grim Santos, Sean Spinobi, Tark Latif, Tom Hiles, Vault 13 Hero, and Will Yates. Thank you very much, guys, for supporting the show. All the social media links are down below: Instagram, Twitter, You can find old episodes of the podcast at thepenskypodcast.com. That's thepenskypodcast.com, where we've got so many episodes now that they don't all show up on the podcast feed. So if you want the older ones, you can go there. And I think that's pretty much it. We'll be back with Star Trek Beyond. Will be the final Kelvin movie. And then we'll be moving on to Star Trek Picard after that. Clay, do you have anything you want to say?
Hopefully I did all of my sniffling far enough away from the mic that it's not grossing everybody out. I'm on like the tail end of my cold, so
we'll be better.
I'm gonna blow my nose for the rest of my life as soon as we're done. So.
Be ready for Picard, I guess, at that point too. And all the other shows you can find at thepenskyfile.com. If you're so interested, we've got a bunch of different podcasts, and a brand new one will be coming out, the Rotten Horror Picture Show with Clay and Amanda. That'll be out next week, or this week, I guess. This week, the week that this podcast comes out. You guys will be talking about The Shining, correct? The Shining?
Yes, the first episode will be The Shining.
I think that's it. Thank you very
much.
And
I sorry, we didn't even talk about how the Wrath of Khan death is completely invalidated like 5 minutes later by bringing Kirk back to life.
Yeah, in a very we're wrapping this up kind of way.
Yeah, this movie sucks.
Good. At least you can just experiment freely on tribbles in the Star Trek universe. It's a good plus.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's no great shakes. But we'll call it there for a day. Let us know what you guys thought about the movie. You can write your comments down below. You can email us. You can meet us on social media, all that stuff. Into Darkness. It is what it is. We'll be back with Star Trek Beyond, which I have not seen, but Clay seems to like quite a bit. And I think all the people on Discord enjoy Beyond as well. So we'll be back with that. Thank you guys very much for listening, and we'll see you later.